Welcome to Planetary Gig Talk, Tales of Music and Magic. I'm your host, Jefferson Glassy, Chief Spiritual Dude of the Planetary Gig Society, whose mission is creating unity through music. But as I really like to say, making connections through music with the intention of bringing peace. And today I am in Studio One at the worldwide headquarters of the Planetary Gig Society. But our guest is 3,000 or so miles away out on the West Coast, San Francisco, and met him at Victor Wooten's Spirit of Music Camp, and we'll talk about that. Some interesting stuff we were talking about. Nathan Black. Nathan, thanks so much for taking the time and joining us today.
It's my pleasure, and I'm happy to be here, and I'm grateful to have met you out at Wooten Woods outside Nashville, Tennessee. So happy to be here.
Yeah, that's a great camp. It's my second time at Spirit of Music Camp, and they tag on Theory of Music Camp with it, and I'm glad they do that first, because otherwise it would be stressful.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of the yin yang thing of stress you out with all the music theory and the technicalities, and then we had a few days there to kind of open up a bit and kind of expand.
Yeah,
and zoom out.
Yeah, it was really great, and I remember distinctly kind of how this happened, because during the camp I'd see you around and whatever, there were a bunch of people there, but at one point I sat down and we ended up talking about things, and I mentioned the podcast and whatever, I forget, and you started talking, and we'll get to this later because you can, but started talking about in your business, which somehow relates to money. There was some musical aspects to it, and I went, what, is that right? I'd love to hear more about that. So what is it that you do real briefly before we?
So I run a research firm and investment fund out here in the San Francisco Bay Area, and we focus on volatility and trying to understand the dynamics of markets, and that's kind of where you can already kind of see where music kind of creeps in understanding the dynamics of a system and understanding volatility, because volatility is just vibration, the vibration of the system, the vibration of what's going on. So it shouldn't be, it shouldn't be that surprising, or I guess I am excited of how many things music kind of interrelates with. Music definitely relates to everything, actually, I think. So it's, on the one hand, it is surprising that things like markets or money can be musical, and I'm constantly surprised by how many things I'm finding and relating to music. But on the other hand, when you kind of just zoom out and understand change and dynamics and the kind of interrelation of things and how everything is connected, and things like language and communication and expression, there's more connectivity to everything than we see, because we kind of see things as being maybe more isolated than they actually are, or more discrete than they actually are. So yeah, there's
all right. So we'll get into that, but that's a little teaser for anybody listening, because they'll probably saying, what? I want to hear this. But I just always like to ask. I'm so interested, because I didn't really grow up with a whole lot of music in my house and didn't start playing harmonica till I was 43, really seriously. But how did music come into your life? Was there music in your family? Did you start playing bass first? Were you young? Did you pick it up? Did you take lessons? I mean, do you remember? Do you have any first memories, or just how did you get on this path?
Yeah, I definitely grew up in a musical family. So both my mother and father play instruments. My dad plays guitar. My mom plays the piano. So I grew up with a lot of mainly guitar in the household. And I can remember back to where I think I was first properly introduced to a musical instrument that spoke to me, which is I think a fifth grade talent show at an elementary school where I grew up in Atlanta, Georgia, where I saw someone play a drum solo on the stage, and it was funny because the second that he started playing the drum solo, I knew immediately, I knew instantly that, okay, this is an instrument I'm going to play the rest of my life.
Really?
Yeah, there was something that really kind of hit me with it because I never really heard it before, and not heard it before solo. So there's something about the dynamics of the instrument itself, and just the way that, you have such separation musically between the bass drum, the snare drum, and the hi-hat and the cymbals. You have this huge range of frequencies kind of coming at you.
Right.
But each kind of lives in their own kind of frequency band, so you can play around with the whole range of what we can perceive as music, from the bass drum all the way up to, the splash cymbals and the ride cymbals and the China cymbals and all these things, and the rhythms you can produce within that, the broad frequency band. It really kind of pulled me into the moment.
Wow.
And I definitely had a kind of realization of this is the coolest thing I've ever heard, number one.
Mm-hmm.
And number two, a kind of feeling that I'm going to do this, and I'm not going to do it half-heartedly. I'm going to do it like all in for the rest of my life.
Wow.
And that was maybe the fourth or fifth grade. And I kind of quickly I just, went home and started banging on stuff.
Much to your parents' delight. But they're musicians, so
yeah.
They got it. They got it.
They get it. They get it. We had a basement that I could always run down into and be louder down there.
So that was your first thing, the drums, and did you get a drum set pretty soon? You start out with one, and then you go more. Did you play and then continue to play drums for quite some time, and still do?
Yeah. I got a drum set probably a year or two after that. In the interim, I was playing on boxes and Tupperware. I would go raid the kitchen, bring out all the pots and pans and all the Tupperware. And set that stuff up. Tupperware.
It's good stuff, I would think.
It is good stuff, and you can get some good sounds out of Tupperware, and you can get some really good sounds out of pots and pans if you just kind of hit them the right way and experiment with them, and you can get some really interesting sounds out of them. And most importantly, you can be rhythmic, and you can kind of express your own musicality and what you're feeling through them. So it doesn't matter. It's not a full, standard drum set. I could still experiment with rhythm and experiment with drumming through them. So that was really cool. I think my parents immediately noticed how kind of entrapped I was by the drums and rhythm.
Cool. And were you playing with music, with records and stuff, along with it, or just mainly?
The first record I can remember playing along with was probably "Crash" by Dave Matthews Band. I think that record won a Grammy that year, the year it came out, and my dad bought the record. And I remember, I think, actually seeing Carter Beauford, the drummer, playing live at the Grammy Awards that year.
Wow.
And seeing his drum set and being just immediately, completely lasered in on his drum set and how fascinating it was, and that he had all these amazing drums. He had, and also all the percussion instruments like wood blocks and, wind chimes and all these things. So he was getting all these amazing sounds, and he had this amazing range of expression through the drums. So I really started playing the drums and understanding rhythm through Carter and his drumming, which is he has great feel, and he has amazing syncopation. So syncopation has kind of been a theme and a focus of mine throughout my musical history.
Cool. He apparently used to hang out with Roy Wooten and the Wootens in their garage.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a kind of
whoa.
Another amazing coincidence. But yeah, I guess they grew up pretty close by to each other, and they would play. This is before the Dave Matthews Band, I believe.
Yeah.
They would play in their garage. And so yeah, that's.
Yeah, he talks about it in that when I did the interview with him. Something just, this is a little bit of a tangent, but it just occurred to me. I mentioned I hadn't really played music until I got bit by harmonica in my 40s, blues harmonica. Is that I was at an Irish bar one night when I was probably 21, and some woman was playing the spoons. And I'm like, that's cool. That's really cool. And so she taught me how to hold the spoons, and I went home And I did spend a lot of time just banging my legs black and blue and
Yeah.
getting different sounds depending on whether you played on your kneecap or on your thigh, or if sometimes I would like pull my shorts up and play right on my flesh, and it made a different sound, and you get these
Hmm.
cupping sounds. So what you were saying just really triggered something to me. So did you then end up in, I guess, going into high school or whatever? You played in middle school. You played in bands. Were you always playing
Yeah.
the drums? Were you the drummer?
Always playing the drums. Yep. I was the drummer. I was in jazz band, the drummer in jazz band. And I played, snare drum and concert band throughout middle school and high school. And I tried marching band for about a day or two
You had to carry
before
that big
realizing
boy around, I guess, or you
got to carry
this.
that thing around. Yeah, but I didn't like the rigidity of having to play exactly what I was told to play.
Ah,
You know, I think I'm much more of an improviser and much more of a kind of feeling the music and feeling the vibrations within me and wanting to express it, almost being a conduit to the music. Um, so so I always gravitated more towards funk and soul and jazz and and improvisation. So yeah, I joined some bands, played in a few over the years, and actually, I think it was the second band that I joined. We played together for 5 or more years. We met at a Bela Fleck and the Flecktones concert.
whoa!
Actually, I was sitting right next to the bassist and guitarist, and
What year was that about?
that must have been maybe 2005 or six, maybe.
Huh? That's cool.
Yeah, and we just got along really well, and we started playing, and we could just play for 7 or 8 hours straight
Wow.
without hardly without stopping. So we just had really good musical chemistry, and we're all kind of very present when we were playing, and liked exploring
Very
music
cool.
together. So yeah, so drums. So I'm mainly a drummer. I mean, I mainly think of myself as a kind of rhythmist,
Or
um,
percussionist, maybe.
percussionist. Yeah,
Yeah.
and then I picked up the bass as well in high school, and then a few years later the guitar. So I played drums, bass, and guitar, but mainly it's rhythm, and it's the lower frequencies that really kind of speak to me more for some reason.
Hmm.
So I love the bass, um, and I love the drums. I just love being rhythmic with things. I always play, on the desk at school, you know,
Yeah.
different patterns, and get in trouble, from the teacher for making noise and all this kind of stuff. But I was always practicing. It was flowing through my head and flowing through me. It seemed, um, so I kind of couldn't stop it, and I still can't.
Yeah. So, and now you play these instruments. Are you in bands now? Or
Not right
any?
now. So not right now. So I moved over to the San Francisco Bay Area probably 3 or so years ago, and I had to downsize some of my musical instrument, the portfolio of instruments that I have a bit, because you have higher housing density here. So I really can't have a drum set
Yeah.
because I have so many neighbors. So I had to get an electric drum set, which I have a kind of love-hate relationship with,
Mm-hmm.
because you don't get that much. You can't express yourself as sensitively, or can't express yourself with as much fidelity through an electric drum set as you can an acoustic drum set. You can get much more sounds and interesting harmonics out of any acoustic instrument, really. But it's better than having no drum set at all.
Yeah.
So I'm doing a lot of recording these days, and a lot of playing, and a lot of messing around. I have an EEG, an electroencephalograph here that I wear on my head sometimes, which monitors my brain waves,
Whoa.
and I can do that while I'm playing as well. So that's kind of cool. Well, to be able to play the drums and kind of experiment musically when you're getting feedback from your body. So either your heart rate or your brain waves, which your brain waves are just, we don't know much about them, but it's clusters of neurons in your brains that fire in sync, that fire together. And you can have different regions of your brain that fire at different frequencies. And depending on your mood, or depending on if you're really focused or relaxed or distracted or anxious or present, that kind of manifests itself differently when you look at your brain waves.
Wow, that's really cool. So you can notice things about your playing by looking at the monitor, the printout, or whatever it is, the readout. And
like how's the music that you're playing affecting you right now? And what if you could see that or feel that and get that feedback loop? You're almost getting into a feedback loop with yourself, with your own biology as you're playing. So that kind of opens up a whole new branch of inner exploration, I think.
Whoa, this is like Dan Levitin type stuff. And what have you sort of found or learned or hypothesized while putting this together like that?
So when I play with my eyes closed and I can hear in my ear in real time my heartbeat, and I'm playing the drums, I'm playing along. I can actually play along with it, and I can control my heart rate, which is sort of this like master, it's a kind of the master frequency in our body, where all the processes in our body seem to be relating somehow to the frequency of our heartbeat and the frequency of our breath. Like our breath and our heartbeat are the two things that we can, more or less tap into and control to some degree.
They're like your basic internal rhythms.
Yeah. But listening, if you listen to them closer, then you can get basically into a deeper flow state with yourself and with the moment. So it just kind of provides interesting creative avenues to go with the music.
Well, it's very cool. Plus, one of the things about music, which is hard when you're starting. I just sort of started playing guitar 5 years ago, and trying to listen to the other instruments and hear what the people are singing and hear it all at the same time and still play is not easy. So,
no.
You're talking about listening to the point of your playing. We got San Francisco streets there, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, I got some trains.
Trains.
Live near the train tracks here. Yeah. That's a G going by there. The train horn's a G.
Is it?
And sometimes the Doppler effect, it'll get pushed up to an A or an A flat. But you can use whatever sounds around you to incorporate into your music.
Yeah. Well, Victor talks about that, and I try to do it, but I'm still working on that. But so you can be playing and be, I guess, so kind of in control and present or aware. Maybe it's not in control, but that you can hear your heartbeat.
Yeah,
that's pretty cool. Do you talk about that with friends and things, or?
Not a whole lot. But I do have some friends who definitely understand the power of presence and the power of getting yourself into flow states and the power of meditation and just kind of being still.
Yeah.
And that's where you can hear more things, is when you and your own internal dialogue and your own thinking and getting out of your own head, when you still all those things, that's when you can hear and feel the vibrations better, more clearly.
Wow.
And tap into those.
That's really cool. Are there some books that you were checking out about this, or have you written your own book about it yet?
No, not yet. The music lesson was definitely really, really, really powerful for me. That book.
Yeah, for sure. Me too.
Because he kind of goes into all this stuff and directly relates it to playing, and to how just if you just kind of surrender to the music, right, which is just deep listening, getting yourself out of the way, then and let music play through you rather than you playing music, right? So a big part of it seemed to be like getting your own ego out of the way.
Yeah.
Which is hard to do and takes practice, but I think we should be practicing things like that, just like we practice scales and just like we practice timing with metronomes and things like that. Like practicing getting out of your own way, practicing being still and listening.
And how do you do that when you're playing? Like, if you want to say, "Hey Jeff, here's something you should try." Do you have any thoughts about that, or suggestions, or?
It all emerges from listening. Like the groove emerges from listening. And so I like the way that, that Victor Wooten talks about always feeling the groove first, feeling the rhythm of what's happening around you, tapping into that. And like dropping into the groove first and letting that guide whatever you do. Right. So instead of having your own mind, instead of forcing yourself into the situation or forcing what you want to have happen to happen, into your playing, dropping back, actually, almost dropping all effort and just listening and feeling. And I know that always helps me, at least. That always helps me play better. If I just drop back and feel the groove and let my drumming or let my bass playing kind of emerge from that naturally. And otherwise, I'm thinking about what I'm playing, and that kind of
Yeah, but that even works when you're practicing on your own. You sort of just
yeah. I mean, sometimes I'll do some metronome games where I'll put on some good noise canceling headphones and I'm turn the metronome way up so I can just hear the metronome and I can't even hear my own playing. Maybe I'm just playing on a pad, or maybe I'm playing in my head. And all I'm doing is just trying to tune in as much as possible to the metronome and just hear it and feel it. And then not worry as much about what I'm doing or the music that emerges from it. But just really zoning in like a laser on that metronome, and then letting everything else just fade away, kind of letting go of everything else and letting go of judging myself in real time as I'm playing. Mm-hmm. So that creates a kind of self-conscious feedback loop.
Right.
So yeah, anything you can do, at least that I found, to be more present with my playing, which starts from listening. It starts from listening and everything else emerges from that. Wow. That always helps me.
Yeah, and it's similar with guitar as with bass and drums.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not as good at guitar and bass in that I don't have as good technique, or I'm not feeling a melody. I don't feel melody the same way that I feel rhythm. Uh-huh. Even though I know they're related,
Yeah, from Stephen J.
Yeah, from Stephen J. From the whole kind of polyrhythm phenomenon of, if you slow down melody, slow down harmony, you get rhythm, right? Harmony is just rhythm sped up. So if I tap into that, the rhythm of what's happening, then whatever it is I'm doing next feels right. And I know it at least feels right.
Yeah. Cool. Well, that's really, I don't know. That's really cool, Nathan. I didn't know we were going to get into some of that stuff because I thought we were just talking about money. But
no. No, I mean, a lot of this stuff, to me, everything emerges from listening and feeling.
Yeah.
And getting
that's
in
profound,
tune with the dynamics of what's happening around us. Understanding the oscillations and just the different kind of rhythms and dynamics that are kind of always present, in each moment, internally and externally.
Yeah.
So it's not easy, but it's just a practice of getting out of your own way and letting the rhythm express itself through me.
That's very cool. But I do want to talk a little bit about this other topic that we started off on and out at Wooten Woods. And maybe you could just I don't even know exactly what kind of question to ask, but maybe you could describe how you were thinking about it. You gave a little prelude to it in the beginning of the conversation here, but did you first start noticing this at some point? I mean, I agree with you because I've talked with a lot of people in this podcast about music and shamanism and music and Tai Chi and music and audiology and music, and I mean all these. I mean, I see it. There's so many relations. It's like there is nothing but music in different manifestations.
Right. Right.
How did it start? How did it come to you? And what are you thinking about that relationship that we were talking about with the markets or whatever?
I don't know. I think money and markets was something that I didn't understand very well, or it felt like there was this outside force that was just happening that I didn't understand very well. That was this huge thing, and it was complicated. And I definitely didn't understand it, and it's kind of scary. Like money can be a scary thing.
Oh yeah. Totally.
But fundamentally, I see it as a language. Money is this medium of exchange. It is a thing that we use to represent and communicate our economic intent to others. So it's kind of a thing that, again, emerged from the fundamental need to exchange with other humans, going back to, early humans of I have all this corn, you have some salt. If I can use some of your salt, I'll give you some of my corn.
Yeah.
And we can kind of trade. And so this process of exchanging value and a kind of transaction is something that's kind of very fundamental to growth and to cooperation. And it's also, once we start using other things to represent value, like rocks or shells or gold or little pieces of paper with things written on it, now that's something that represents value, because we all agree that it kind of represents value. It's sort of this emergent language from the fundamental need to transact. So we express ourselves with money the same way we express ourselves with any other kind of language, any kind of the alphabet, So I kind of see it as a language to express economic intent. And it's the way we express value, right? Like if you run a t-shirt stand and I have $20, I give you the $20, you give me the t-shirt. I'm basically saying I value the t-shirt more than $20, and you're saying I value your $20 more than the t-shirt. So we're just gonna trade. And so it's a kind of positive sum thing. It's a kind of win-win situation.
Right.
So I think money fundamentally is about is a tool of communication. And I think music is a language as well.
Yeah.
Right. So they're related at this kind of ground level, that they're both about expression, communication, and just this kind of overall framework of a language. And markets are basically systems to come to agreement on the value of things, a kind of shared consensus. Because we don't know what the price of something is, or we don't know what the value of something is, until we all kind of come together and transact a bunch, and then the value of a thing emerges based on the group dynamics and how we kind of buy and sell things and show our how we demand things and the available supply, and how all that's changing over time. You get this emergent kind of market behavior and market dynamics, and the price changing of something over time, the price to over, whether it's a stock or whether it's a currency. But I also kind of see, maybe even deeper than that, kind of like how Stephen Jay talks about, music as a life form, or music as an organism. Sometimes it kind of helps me to think about money or currency as an organism as well, and markets as an organism. That maybe the US dollar itself is a kind of organism. It's a kind of thing that's out there, that's dynamic. It's always changing. Kind
of has a vibration, if you think about it in a way. Yeah.
Absolutely. It vibrates every time that it's vibrating all the time. And every transaction is a kind of vibration.
Yeah.
So markets are kind of this mechanism that we use to collectively come to consensus on what the value of things are. But that changes over time, just like everything else. So there's dynamics to it. And the dynamics is what is encoded in volatility. right? So when you think about volatility and the volatility of an asset, that is just kind of the nature of how it's changing over time. It's not necessarily good or bad to me. It's just the nature of change.
You mean like the housing market or pork bellies or something? I mean, it just how many of them are there versus how many people want them or something? Is it?
Yeah, and how that changes over time, or it could be what is the value of a pound of coffee beans, today versus tomorrow versus how does the dollar or the euro or the Turkish lira or the Chinese yuan or the Mexican peso, what is the value of all these things? How does it change over time? And its change is just volatility. So I'm kind of looking at the volatility itself of markets and trying to understand kind of from a probabilistic standpoint as well, how and why change occurs.
Change in the economic system, you mean?
Or just change in the economic system, change in the value of something, just change in whatever the thing is that I'm looking at that's moving. Right? So every asset can just move up or down, right? And how it changes is kind of musical to me, in that it's always changing, just like kind of everything is always changing, but it's also interrelated to so many different factors. So you have all these different vibrations of the system kind of perturbing it this way or that way. And it's making some kind of music to me, right? Because these are basically macro vibrations that are a result of all these micro vibrations in this ongoing fluid system, right? So markets are fluid. I kind of think of them as a kind of fluid as well. And so I study things like fluid dynamics and turbulence and chaos theory to kind of get a better feeling for how do complex, nonlinear dynamic systems work, from a standpoint of change, from a standpoint of volatility, from a standpoint of how are they connected to everything else, and how are things like emotions and psychological states like uncertainty encoded into these systems, right? Because emotion plays a huge role in markets, a humongous role.
Yeah. I mean, you hear about the stock market. Well, the traders were nervous about X, Y, or Z, and that's why the markets are up and down. And of course, it's all sort of human things that are happening on that influence them. But as you're talking, I'm thinking about that we've got this globe and all kinds of organisms on it and humans, and the humans in one part could be manufacturing and producing a whole bunch of stuff or having emotional issues, and so it's almost like waves in an ocean that will move around and change and interact, and the rings in a pond, the little waves in a pond,
exactly.
hitting each other different ways, and sort of we're through all of our actions and emotions and what we're doing, we're creating these different vibrations, which one way you can look at it is through the markets and what money represents, as you've been saying.
Exactly right. And it can sound kind of strange and kind of weird, because typically we don't think about money or markets or transactions in this way. It kind of seems more impersonal, or more cold, or more, it's just this mechanistic process that's happening out there that I don't have anything to do with. But you're right, it is like the ocean. It is like a river flowing. Some of the models that I use, and a lot of the math that I use, which math is another language, right? It's a kind of language of nature. So all these things, math, music, markets, I kind of all see them as languages and kind of tools of expression. But there was this fellow, Harold Hurst, who, in the early 1900s was studying the Nile River. And he was fascinated with the Nile River and how it changed and how it was constantly flooding. and he was kind of charged with the with the with the job of building a dam, kind of constructing the theoretical concept around how big do you build a dam when we have a river here that is huge. We have no data. We don't have much data on it because this is before computers, before the internet.
Mm-hmm.
There's not a whole lot of good data around, well, how much can we expect this river to flood or move up this year versus next year? So how tall do you even make a dam? Things like that. So he came up with this brilliant heuristic, a mathematical heuristic. It's very robust that has to deal with trends, and can you quantify trends based on the overall fluid that you're looking at? So is this a process? Is this a dynamic process that's totally random and there's no rhyme or reason at all to the system, to the process? Or is there some persistence or some memory to the process where maybe the river for the next few years is actually it's actually kind of moving out and flooding out, and so measuring that over time for all these years and coming up with a kind of framework for understanding trends in fluid flow that directly relates to markets, because markets are kind of fluid, and you're trying to understand the turbulent nature of this system. And is it trending right now? How do you even know that? How strongly? What are the kind of internal feedback loops and mechanisms that are driving this thing? And can we listen closely to what's happening? And that's kind of the key too, right? Is just watching the system, watching the processes, and trying to be in tune with what's happening and not overlaying your own thoughts or opinions, narratives, stories on top of what's happening, based on your own ego or your own agenda, but listening really, really closely to the system and to the natural dynamics of it to try to feel it better. And that's what I try to do with markets, and music helps tremendously with that.
Wow, it's just fascinating. What came to mind was, I guess there's like in music, there's consonance and dissonance as well in the markets, and times when things are rolling, and then things when they're not moving along so smoothly. I guess there can be lead voices in terms of, some product is really hot or some buyer's market is really strong, and that gives rise to another aspect that helps teach you about what's going on.
Yeah, that can be the driver of some big new wave that comes in that changes the whole dynamic.
So listening to that new lead voice is as demonstrated or indicated by economic figures. And I listened to and Oprah has a pretty good podcast series. I think Soul Stories is what it's called, maybe something different. And she has a lot of different folks on, and I can't remember the name of this person. But it was really interesting because she was talking about money just as flowing, like blood flowing or like rivers flowing. And when it flows, it's sort of good, it's nourishing. And when it gets real backed up, like then it's a problem. You get too much blood in your foot, problem. Too much too much water on the fields, problem. Too much money in too few people.
Yep.
It's like problem. You're waiting for an aneurysm or something like that. I thought that was, and that kind of ties into what you're talking about in a way too.
Yeah, that might be an analog of that. A musical analog might be one person on stage playing way too loud and trying to overpower everybody else.
Right.
And you kind of have an inequality there of energy flowing.
And they may not they may think, well, I'm playing really loud because I'm the star. I'm the dude here. I'm on stage. I got the big instrument, but doesn't realize that everybody's saying, could you just turn it down a little bit? Sure, you're good. But
Yeah.
let's spread the voices around a bit, eh?
Yeah, exactly. So you can kind of start to see when maybe a system gets a little bit out of tune or a little bit distorted, you know. Those are all interesting things too, very interesting parallels for sure. I think if you just look closely, listen closely, you can see a lot of those types of parallels in the realm of dynamics.
It's very cool.
With music and markets.
And the other thing, you started off talking about, and this makes complete sense about why there is money. Hey, I got a whole bunch of corn. You got some milk or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I can't eat all this corn.
Right.
I can't drink all this milk. I can't eat all this whatever.
Right.
I've got way too many whatever. But that lends itself to sharing and distributing more, so that things are more equal, so that there may be more consonant flow better. But when you have money, then some people worry. Nobody would ever worry that I got, I gotta keep all this corn because I might have to eat it someday, because that doesn't make any sense. But people do feel I gotta have all this money, because what if I didn't have all this money? Then, there's a, the I don't know if it's just the medium of expression, but there kind of is a fear element is introduced into this equation where, like I said, the guy he's afraid he's going to have to throw away all the milk that he can't trade or what have you, and people aren't usually afraid that they're going to have way too much money.
Right. But yeah, that's fear, and fear is definitely a major emotion that manifests itself in all realms of life, right? I mean, fear can show up in your music.
Yes.
So of course it shows up in markets as well. And the trick is to not get wrapped up in fear, and to not let the fear of others maybe affect you too, in a kind of herd dynamics standpoint, kind of a herd behavior standpoint, where you're just kind of watching what everyone else is doing, and how they're reacting to things is also how you're going to react to things. And that's usually that usually doesn't work out well,
Right.
Because you can have this kind of over amplification of negative emotions and a kind of overreaction, because you have this chain reaction of emotion from this person to this person, this person, this person, and it grows exponentially. And yeah, you can. That's a bad situation.
Yeah.
You can get taken advantage of. You usually don't make good decisions when you're in a state of fear. And you're not going to play your instrument well when you're fearful. So kind of taking a step back and removing yourself from those emotional dynamics, instead of getting wrapped up in them and being emotionally reactive, right? And this is where things like mindfulness and meditation and other things can kind of help as well, because you can start to recognize, okay, am I being reactive to the situation? Am I being reactive to what's happening, or am I kind of calmly responding to it in a way that I think makes sense, given how I'm perceiving things?
Yeah. So how would you sort of, I don't know, encapsulate maybe the lessons that understanding music and being able to listen through music and play music could have for the markets and analysis and traders or whatever? Are there some lessons that you've come up with? I mean, you've sort of been doing your job, your business, with this the thinking about how music is similar. So I wonder what the kind of the lessons are that we could learn, and that would sure help the world if we could figure out how to make the markets and the economic systems, work a little more. So it might be more like listening to a concert than listening to a, back alley brawl.
Exactly. Where all the components can maybe can start to get more in tune with each other.
Yeah.
Right. So right now everyone's kind of playing out of tune with each other, right? Like the internet has helped with this a lot in terms of leveling the playing field. I feel when it comes to an information network, an information transfer network. But money is just information as well. But we're all playing out of tune because there's the United States version of money, then there's the Chinese version of money, and there's the Canadian version of money, and they're not really that interoperable. So it's kind of like everyone's still in a bit of a tribal mindset of this is what we use as to store value or to communicate value. So it seems like to get the whole system operating more in tune, it definitely starts with listening better and understanding the different components better and using our empathy there, so that you can have this kind of freer flow of information globally, and it's not everything stuck over here. All the money is stuck over here in the United States, or it's stuck over here in this bank or in this account. So I think building networks where you can have the transfer and communication of information on a more kind of horizontal level playing field. In the same way that, you can email someone across the world, you can send a text message to someone across the world, but you can't send money to someone across the world. It's very hard to.
Yeah.
You can, but it's very hard. There's a lot of friction in the process, and all those middlemen take their piece because of the friction that they're part of. So yeah, I think that, fundamentally, there's a lot of similarities, and there's a lot we can learn in terms of the mindset. The mindset being, it relates very closely to Stoicism and Confucianism and Taoism and Buddhism, of flowing with what's happening, not trying to fight a kind of the natural progression of how information wants to flow, just like a river, kind of always flowing. That's why that's a common analogy in a lot of these circles, the whole river analogy, right? Don't get caught up in the rapids of the river yourself, and don't try to force the river to maybe turn a different direction, but can you become closer to the river? Can you be the river yourself? And can you not try to control things that you can't control, and only focus on what you can control? And that allows you to be adaptable and to be sort of nuanced, and ultimately helps you learn and grow from uncertainty and grow from volatility, and actually maybe know yourself better or know the world better by having a more positive relationship to uncertainty. And uncertainty is a very dominant emotion in markets.
Uncertainty is the only thing that's a constant.
Yeah. Yep.
But and
right.
also, from music, maybe, I think, boy, if we could change our attitudes a little bit or modify that, more money isn't necessarily better. There's
Right.
a saying somebody told me, all that is not given away is lost.
Mm-hmm.
And with music, it's not more is better, louder,
Right.
more cymbal, more cowbell, kind of a thing. So, man, Nathan, this is really so fascinating. What a great conversation, and some good things to think about.
All these things are related to me, nature and growth, and the way that a forest might grow, and the way that maybe birds are communicating, and the way they use language, and the way they use rhythm, and the way they communicate and transmit emotion, and the way that we have sort of man-made, in quotes, systems like markets and money, which I think are actually more natural than we think. And these other realms like music, there's a lot of overlap once you start peeling back the surface and peering into the world of the dynamics, how things are changing over time, and just kind of being more in tune with the vibrations and oscillations of what's happening, and just listening closely to them, feeling them closely. and then having your behavior emerge from them.
Yeah. Man, brilliant. Okay, well, Nathan, thanks so much for taking the time. This is just, I think we could go on and on here, but we got the crux of it. I hope maybe you'll get some other conversations started. Maybe you'll write the book or something too, and that'd be good.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people need to hear more of what you have to say. So really appreciate it.
I appreciate it, Jeff. And it was great, getting to know you there at Wooten Woods. And, I also really appreciated just watching how positively you were interacting with other people there as well, because you kind of always bring this kind of spirit of positivity and presence and allowing people to kind of be themselves and disarming people. So you had just a great energy there. And it was wonderful to get to know you. So yeah, thanks for chatting.
All right, man. This has been great, and I'm sure it won't be the last time. So we'll stay in touch, and if I don't see you until the next Wooten Woods experience, be well, and thanks very much.
You too. Thank you.
Yeah, Nathan Black, everybody. Thank you. You've been listening to Planetary Gig Talk, Tales of Music and Magic. I'm your host, Jefferson Glassy, Chief Spiritual Dude of the Planetary Gig Society. We talk with musicians and others about the power of music and how we can use music to help create a better world. Please check out our website, www.planetarygigs.org, for information about some of the organizations promoting music and musicians, resources about the power of music, books, movies, articles, including new research on music and the brain. We welcome your support. The Planetary Gig Society is a Section 501c3 charitable organization, and you can donate on the website. You also can receive a free email signature block demonstrating your support for Planetary Gig Society. Please follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Planetary Gigs. And we want to thank fabulous musician and teacher Eric Weinberg of Little Eric Studios for the Planetary Gig Talk music titled Chill Kid, It's Saul. So please check out Planetary Gig Talk on iTunes, Google Play, and Stitcher. Subscribe and hear all the upcoming episodes. Thanks very much.